Hey guys, I'm Justin Czar with bowhunting.com, and today we are going to walk you through the process of building your own arrows. We're going to take you through from start to finish. We're going to show you all the different tools and supplies you're going to need to build arrows on your own. So let's get started. Now, not every one of these tools you absolutely need to build your own arrows. These are just the tools that I like to have available. Some of them are optional. So let's start at the beginning and we'll walk you through each one of these things. Obviously, you're going to need some arrows to get started with. We are assuming for purposes of this video that you have selected the right arrow for you and you know what length of arrow that you need and you have the right spine and all that stuff. So we've got a dozen Easton Axis arrows here. When you buy new arrow shafts, they are going to come with inserts. These come with a hit insert. This is an aluminum hit insert. I'm going to show you a couple different options, including a brass option as well. A lot of arrow shafts will come with an epoxy or an adhesive to install your inserts. If they do not come with them, you're going to need some epoxy of your own. For purposes of this build, we are going to be installing arrow wraps on our arrows. We've got our arrow fletchings, our adhesive for our fletching. We've got a couple different fletching jigs. We have an arrow squaring device. Of course, we have an arrow saw right here to cut our arrows to the proper length. And then we've got an arrow spinner over here to check the straightness of our arrows. So that is a basic rundown of all these supplies and tools. So the first thing we're going to cover today is going to be cutting your arrows to the proper length. So when it comes to cutting your arrows to the proper length, obviously you are going to need an arrow saw. There's a variety of different models out there. They all pretty much do the same thing. You've got a rotary saw on this end, you've got an adjustable stopper here. You can see that we've got a tape measure that's taped on here that's going to allow us to adjust the overall length of our arrow. I'm assuming, again, for purposes of this video, that you know what length arrow that you need. For me personally, I shoot about a 28.5-inch arrow, so we can see I've got this set to 28.5 inches. So all we're going to need to do is get this saw plugged in. You're going to put your arrow in here, and then the important thing to remember when you run your arrow through the saw is, number one, you want to wear eye protection just in case there's any flying debris or pieces that happen to come off while you're cutting. But number two, as you push the arrow in here, you're going to want to rotate the arrow. You don't want to just push it straight through the saw. You want to go ahead and rotate the arrow until that one is cut off, and then that arrow is done and ready to move to the next step. All right, now that we've got our arrow cut to length, I've gone ahead and I've actually removed the nock. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to square both ends of this arrow. You know, number one, when you cut it on the arrow saw, it's not always perfectly flush. And also the same with the nock end. When they come from the factory, they're pretty close, but sometimes they're not perfect, and having perfectly square ends on both sides of your arrow is very important for the accuracy and the proper installation of your components. So I'm going to use the G5 arrow squaring device. This is a great handy little tool, very simple to use. And before we get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a silver marker. You can use a gold marker or just anything that you can see on the end of this arrow shaft. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and color the end of the shaft with this silver marker. And the reason for that is as I rotate it on this arrow squaring device, I'm going to check it, and when all of my silver marker is gone, I know that I've squared completely this end of the arrow. It's really the best way to be completely sure that you've got a completely square end on both sides. All right, now that we've got both ends of our arrow squared, I'm going to go ahead and clean out the inside of the arrow shaft. And the reason I'm doing that is so that the adhesive for the insert has a better chance to stick. There is some residual residue from the manufacturing process as well as from the cutting and squaring process we just did. So I like to use a Q-tip. I don't use anything special, just a Q-tip with some water on it. I've had really great luck with this. I know some people out there like to use acetone or alcohol or something along those lines, but honestly, in my opinion, I've never used anything other than water and never really had an issue. So I'm going to go ahead and take a Q-tip. We're going to stick it down in this arrow shaft. We're going to get this thing cleaned out real good. You can see when I pull it out, this thing's just full of carbon residue, and this is what would prevent our adhesive from sticking properly. I like to clean out both ends of the arrow shaft because on my arrows, I'm actually going to be installing Luminox in them, and the Luminox does require a clean inside of the arrow shaft to complete and make a good connection. So you can see that the nock end of the arrow that I did not cut, significantly less carbon residue on that side than the other side. And then the next thing I'd like to do is just take a dry Q-tip, go ahead and put in there, helps to speed up that drying process. And once we have done that, this arrow is now ready to put the insert in it. Now, depending on the type, make and model of arrow that you're shooting, there's a bunch of different insert options out there for you. This, again, is an Easton Axis arrow, so it uses what's called their hit insert. The standard insert that it comes with is an aluminum insert, relatively lightweight, and these inserts actually sit on the inside of the arrow shaft. So the hit insert is hidden insert technology, so it sits completely inside the arrow where you don't see it. I'm going to be installing a brass version of this hit insert in these particular arrows. Using the brass allows me to gain a little bit of extra weight, which increases my FOC, gives me some better momentum, better penetration for a bow hunting scenario. So I'm going to be installing the brass hit inserts. Again, depending on the type of arrow shaft, the make and model that you are selecting, you may have an insert that looks something like this. This is like a half in, half out, where you could see when I slide this in here, you can actually see this insert on the outside of the arrow and it butts up to the arrow shaft. So there's a couple different styles out there depending on your personal preference, but they all install pretty much the same way, which is going to be using a two-part epoxy. These Easton arrows happen to come with epoxy in the package, so we're going to mix this up. If your inserts or your arrows did not come with epoxy, just a standard two-part epoxy like this from Loctite will do just fine. So we're going to go ahead and mix some epoxy up and get these inserts put in. So now that we've got our insert put inside of this arrow, we're going to go ahead and move to the next step, which is going to be to begin fletching these arrows. Now, before I apply the actual fletchings themselves to the arrows, I'm going to wrap my arrows. Arrow wraps are available in a variety of sizes and colors. I like to use them because number one, they make my arrow easier to see in flight. Number two, they just kind of look cool. They allow me to customize my setup. This is my bow back here. You can see I've got a lot of orange accessories on it, so I like to use orange arrow wraps, obviously orange fletchings. Everything's kind of color coordinated, and I personally feel like it makes fletching your arrows a little bit easier. The fletchings seem to adhere better to an arrow wrap than a standard arrow shaft. So next up, we're going to install these arrow wraps. It's nice and quick and easy. All right, now when you're installing your arrow wraps, it helps to do it on a surface that's got a little bit of give to it. I like to use a catalog, a mouse pad works pretty well, just a work pad. You just don't want to do it on a flat, hard surface. So I've got a GSM Outdoors catalog here that I use, works pretty well. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to peel off my arrow wrap. I set it obviously face down. I'm going to push my arrow. You want to make sure that you line these things up so they're perfectly straight and your arrow wrap doesn't go on crooked. For me personally, I'm very picky about the way my arrows turn out, so I make sure that all my arrows are indexed the same way so that my arrow wraps sit the same on all of my arrows. I just like the consistency. I feel like it looks nice and clean. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the logo, this Access logo, and I'm going to put it kind of face down, and I'm going to put it right in the middle of my arrow wrap here. I'm going to press down nice and hard, seat that arrow wrap. Now I'm going to roll in one direction to begin seating that arrow wrap. I like at this point to just take my finger and run it along the inside edge of this just to make sure that's really seated down nice. Then I could take my arrow, put it back on this catalog, and finish rolling it out. Now that we've got our arrow wrap installed, we want to make sure that we prep our fletchings and our arrow shaft before we start gluing anything together. And the reason for that is a lot of folks that fletch their own arrows at home have had difficulties in the past with the vein adhering to the arrow. And if you've ever done this in the past, you know what I'm talking about. You fletch up a dozen arrows, you head out to the range, you start shooting, before you know it, you've got veins flying all over the place, and you're sitting there, cursing your veins, or maybe the adhesive that you use saying that this stuff is junk, it doesn't work, right? Well, the problem typically is that you didn't prepare your veins or your arrow shaft properly before you started gluing things together. A lot of companies like AAE are now making these primer pens, which are a great tool and very simple to use. All you're going to do is take this primer pen and you're going to run it along the base of your veins that you're planning on using prior to fletching. And what you're doing here is you're actually cleaning off the base of this vein and you're removing any product that's left over from the manufacturing process. The reason that your veins don't adhere to your wraps or to your arrows properly is usually because there's like a releasing agent that's still on here from the manufacturing process, so your glue's never making it to the vein. It's just getting stuck in that releasing agent, and that's why they're not adhering. So very important. A primer pen is a great tool. The other thing you can use is either acetone or alcohol with a Q-tip. Just dip it in there, run that along the base of your vein, and make sure that this thing is ready to go before you start gluing. Now, you don't have to worry about preparing an arrow wrap. If you're using a wrap, this doesn't have anything on it that would cause the vane to not adhere. And if you hit this with acetone or alcohol, something like that, you risk damaging the wrap. So do not clean your wraps. Now, if you are going vane directly onto your arrow shaft, you do want to clean the arrow shaft as well. Same process. You've got some residual residue from the manufacturing process, so just take some acetone or some alcohol with a wipe. Make sure you clean this down real good, and then you're ready to start fletching. All right, the last piece of this process is going to be actually fletching your arrows. Now, there's a variety of different fletching tools and jigs out there on the market. A lot of folks are partial to these old Bitzenberger jigs. They've been around for a long, long time. I was using these things many years ago. Fletch my old Easton XX75s back in the day. It's still a great jig, provides a lot of adjustability. A lot of folks like these. For me personally, I'm all about efficiency. It's saving time, so I like to use these Easy Fletch jigs. Now, depending on the type of vanes that you're using, there's a variety of different, I guess, fingers, if you want to call these things. You've got these little short guys that you can put in here, which work great if you're using like these little 2-inch vanes. But for me, because I'm using a little bit of a longer 3¼ inch vane, I need these longer ones. So what you're going to do here is you're going to go ahead and put your arrow inside of the jig. There's a little index tool that your nock slides down into so this arrow doesn't move. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're just going to load all 3 of your vanes in here. You're going to take your arrow fletching glue, which there's a variety of different types of this out on the market. They're all basically the same thing. It's pretty much just a fast set adhesive, like a super glue. So you're going to take this, you're going to run a very small bead right along the base of these vanes. These are the vanes that we used our primer pen on, so we know everything is ready to go. So you're going to run a very fine bead along each one of these. All right, now that we've got our glue on all of our fletchings, I'm going to simply close all 3 of these arms onto the arrow, and then it comes with a tool that slides over the end of your arrow to lock these in place. And that's going to hold your fletchings right against the arrow shaft in the perfect position. All right, so once you've got this closed and locked down in place, it's going to take about 30 seconds for these vanes to be completely adhered to my arrow. When I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and pop this collar off and pull the jig off, and we've got a fully fletched, ready to shoot arrow. All right, so at this point, we've got our fully fletched arrow. You can see everything's looking good. Now, a lot of folks, myself included, like to do one extra thing just to make sure that our vanes aren't gonna pop off if they go through a target or something like that. And that is gonna be, we add a small dab of glue to the front and to the back of each one of these fletchings. This is kind of a holdover from the old days. I've been doing this for a long time. It's just, I think it's not entirely necessary, but it's certainly a good practice and it can't hurt anything. So one small dab of glue on the front of each one of these fletchings. Just going to help hold the front of that fletching down in flight, or again, if it happens to pass through a target or an animal. And one little small dab at the back. And that's it. This arrow is completely fully fletched and it is now ready to shoot. Now, the last thing I'm going to do to my arrow in particular, before I call it complete, is I'm going to install my lighted nock into it. So we're going to pull this nock out, which they are a little tight. So I'm going to grab a set of pliers to help me get this one out of here. I'm going to grab my Luminock that I already have set up and ready to go. I'm going to push that down in there. Make sure that thing works. And this arrow is ready to shoot. Well guys, there you have it, the full process of building an arrow from start to finish. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Of course, if you have any questions, make sure you leave your comments below. We will do our best to answer them. If you guys are looking for any of this equipment that you see here, make sure you check out LancasterArchery.com. They've got all the supplies and more for building arrows and doing just about anything you could want to do with archery. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.